All right.
How's it going?
Good. Stephen.
Christian, how's it going?
Nice to meet you.
I'm Christian Flashman, a filmmaker and director and editor, and I had Tabitha in Love in NFFTY a few years ago.
And I'm Stephen Musumeci. Had seen some Hibachi Restaurant 2 years ago, and then Orthodontist Son, I think the year before that.
I loved Orthodontist Son, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
So I got a lot of questions about that one.
All right. Should we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
So what was the first project that made you fall in love with filmmaking?
It's kind of weird. It's not a movie that I love now, but in high school, honestly, I think it was Fight Club. I think that was honestly like seeing that for the first time. I was like, damn, what movies could be, and I think that was the first time I ever looked at a movie that way. Now it's very different. Everything's changed a lot.
It's cool that kind of happens, where your perspective just like totally shifts. And
So yeah, what about you?
got a big bite in my mouth. Freshman year of high school, saw Harold and Maude in a film history class, and that was like the first movie I ever saw where it kind of made me realize the kind of movies I wanted to make and what movies could be.
Right.
And it's still just one of those movies that whenever like I watch it back now, it speaks even more to me. I'm getting so many ribs stuck in my teeth. As soon as you asked me a question, I had a GNP stuck in the side. I was like, oh man. But I loved cartoons. I was really into like drawing growing up and wanted to be an animator, and that kind of shifted into editing and filmmaking. So just loved like cartoons growing up. Junior year of high school, made a movie called Killing Marco, which was a concept just kind of started as a joke. The whole class had to pitch ideas, and I couldn't come up with anything.
Right.
So it was a total like joke concept. It was my first time working on a project where I was like solely directing. I had like made projects before that within class and on my own, but it was always like doing everything.
Right.
Pretty much. But that was the first time just directing. I feel like I developed like a part of my process on that one that I still kind of use to this day.
Wow.
Same kind of
This
thing.
is in high school?
Yeah, junior year of high school.
Right.
And you wrote all your projects, right?
It's like writing and directing. It's a great thing, but sometimes it's hard to write without thinking about making it. You know? And I feel like that can be kind of limiting.
Yeah, for sure.
And everything's like a production hassle. It's like, you know, how are we gonna do this? Like, what, you know, we're not gonna be able to do that because I'm the one that I guess would do it. I have to figure it out. So what was on Tabitha? What was, if there is one thing that really kind of you knew you had to get right, or that was kind of a huge hurdle that you knew you had to cross? What would that be?
I would say the pool net, like getting it to actually look like it was going into the filter, and just kind of like get the right angle where like, because if that didn't make sense, then the rest of the story just doesn't follow. And thankfully we had like the voiceover on top of it to explain it, but just figuring like how do we make it look like it's being sucked into the filter. And there was a lot of like production design stuff in the moment of where it's like that's not working, we have to adjust, and kind of thing where it's like we had to delay some filming, I believe, so that we can get that right. Yeah, what about you? Like what was like one of the big challenges of Hibachi?
Honestly, it's probably getting the restaurant. From what I remember, like,
It's so tough.
yeah, I think that was like, went to like multiple Hibachi restaurants. Like, there was one I remember, it was like the dream. It had like a bit of an older look, like that fell through, and I was kind of sad. And I mean, there was probably what, like four or five Hibachi restaurants in Tallahassee. So it's like we got to get one of these. Like, you know, I miss that student, like, you know, we have like a little pamphlet, and it's like, you know, we're at the film school.
Yeah.
You know, and if they don't do it, they kind of probably like, you know, it's like, it's my education. Like, I don't know.
But now it's like, yeah, we're just
We're a nuisance. We're the worst.
Exactly.
There's so much. It's crazy how much more goes into it out of school than versus in school. Like, and it doesn't matter how many times you can, like, it's hard to even explain. Like, you can explain the steps, but it just feels like there's just this overwhelming. It's just much more overwhelming, the whole thing.
It is so hard to like work on things while you're also just trying to like parent and live. That was a nice thing with college, where I know people always say like, is film school worth it or is it not? I know for me, like, just to be able to have a designated time to be like, oh, I'm, in addition to other classes, just making projects, like that was huge, because now it's like it's such a challenge.
Where does something like Tabitha start?
I know Tabitha specifically started, it was like a dream that Moss had, like a weird sex dream. That's when popped his ankle into place.
Nice.
And usually that's how like most of our projects work, where he might like mention an idea to me. For the most part, I'm just like getting a draft of a script, and then we'll kind of see if it's like worth exploring from there. But we do like Moss is like the principal writer, but then each time, hey buddy, hi.
Oh, he wants the ribs. Yeah, we got some ribs.
Hey.
I don't have a bone. Oh man, I got a lot of ribs to go.
I ate everything.
All right. Well,
Oh wait, there's beans too, right?
But yeah, so writing process wise, usually Moss will send me a draft, and then it's usually a few month period, just like him sending drafts, and then me sending notes, and then us meeting in person and talking about it. So we'll do that for a while, and then eventually getting like outside feedback too, once we feel like it's something that we are confident with.
Mm-hmm. What made you say I have to make this?
I don't know. I definitely like connect to things that feel a little absurd and just like offbeat reality a little bit. And I just felt like there was so much to play with and explore, and like within editing and just kind of guiding cinematography too. Like there was just so much to like piece into it. But yeah, so with Hibachi, was that like a script that you had written for like a separate class, or you wrote like with the intention of like we are filming this? And
intention of filming it, like it was thesis. Got to make something. We're in the writer's room. You know, we'd have like meetup every week, drafts. Everybody would get feedback. That was like the best. I really missed that kind of stuff.
As I was watching it, I was so curious about like how, again, from an editing perspective, how much of it was like to the script in order, and how much like changed in post. Do you remember like if it was like pretty scene by scene, or did you have to like reshape it a bunch?
That one was, I'd wanted it to play scene to scene to scene to scene. That's how it was written. Like no intercutting, none of that. Like it was just like written, you know, this is how it's going to be. I remember doing because that was how it was on my F3. That was how it was on Orthodontist Son. Got into the editing room, put it together, and it was really my directing teacher that watched it, Antonio, and he was just like, man, what is this? He's like, this doesn't work.
that question of what is this?
Yeah.
And
I'm just like,
times,
ooh, God, like,
yeah.
Damn. Like, you know, I was not, truthfully, not expecting that. Like, I was so sure of it, and it was one of those things where, I mean, I kind of, once he's, you know, it's one of those things where when someone says it, it's like, you start seeing what they're, you know.
Here you go. Great. We're going to have a little cleanup session.
Yes, and I think that was the goal, was like, let's keep the energy up, like, you know, this needs to be just crazy. Like, this just needs to be, you know, that was always kind of the way it was. Like, but it allows you to emphasize, you know, very specific little in, out, little, you know, different moments that you can cut in on.
Yeah.
That's something, too, I got really, really into at that time, was just like eye trace and, like, using things like the fire in the background, or, like, stuff like that. Like, where is the audience looking? Like, I just wanted to know at all times, like, yeah, honestly, it was one of those things where it's like you have no idea if it's going to be good. I remember, like, leading up to the first time we screened it, it was just like...
I think I had a film teacher in college who said, like, if you don't hate the first cut of the movie, you're doing something wrong.
I like that.
And it's like, and it's so true, because anytime I film something, as soon as I start editing, I'm like, I messed up everything. Like, it's horrible. I can't look at this. And then I was going to ask, too, so I noticed, like, so many of the shots in that are, like, on these, like, angles of the room. Did you have to, like, map out where everyone was? And was there, like, a process of choosing, like, who sat where?
Definitely.
And how, like...
Just, like, that, the idea of, like, staying flexible. Yeah, they obviously need to have a plan. You need to prep.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, that plan, you need to be ready to throw it all away, like, you know, as soon as you need to, and be able to just, you know, that's the whole thing. Like, I feel like that's what makes a good movie.
You go and think, this is what we're doing, and you get there and something goes wrong, or something shifts, and then it makes you make something better in a way that you couldn't have planned. Which, I don't know, there's something very special about that, which I don't know what else has that kind of energy, but...
Yeah, not much.
But yeah, so, like, speaking of rehearsals, like, when you have, like, bigger scenes like that with a handful of people, and they're all doing very specific things, like, how'd you go about kind of orchestrating that and guiding everyone?
I think we figured out, like, we would just first, like, in the beginning, we would just have them come into, like, a rehearsal room at school and, like, sit everybody out, and then start being like, all right, you know, well, truthfully, when I'm writing, honestly, and I think one of the things that helps about the style is, like, when I'm writing, I'm 100% picturing, like, I'm picturing the scene, and there's also this pressure that I'm the limitation I'm setting on myself. That is, you're doing this in one wide. This is the way it's going to be. So the scene that I think has helped me just understand what's a good scene, because I'm just solely focused on blocking performance.
Yeah, that's something I was learning as well. It's like I haven't dealt with many extras in projects. I think I had like maybe like one dance scene in a project, but besides that, it's always just very like isolated scenes.
Right.
And so I was so curious about like how you like guide the actors, but then also the extras as well. Like, are you specifically talking to your extras too, or do you have someone else on set who's like guiding them?
I remember like going up to like different extras and like just you just have to give them a scene. Like, this is what's going on here. Changing that scene, like, and not being afraid to like make it big, you know, and like, or there's like a couple fighting in one of the shots, and you know, like the waiter's there talking to them, and then they leave, and then the couple just starts like going in at it, you know, like stuff like that. Like, I just love those details.
There's that one moment like the couple who's kind of fighting about like if they want to see the big fire or not, and then there's like the older couple just making out next to them.
That's also my parents.
And it's like,
too.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I love that.
Yep.
It's so
Strangely
funny.
enough.
Is it
The
a big part
music
of it?
too. That's something I want to talk to you about too, because your music is always great, and I know that's definitely something. It's very consistent too. Like the style of the music is very consistent throughout all your projects.
Yeah, music-wise, my friend Warner, Warrenton is his like band's name. He's done the music for the last 3 projects I've done.
Nice.
And kind of similar process with like the writing, where kind of just send him a project and he'll kind of take a crack at it. And I think for the last few ones, we would talk on the phone about a general idea, but I didn't really send any like examples. I just want to see like what would come to him. And then same kind of thing where we just kind of send it back and forth, and I would then like recut the edit to the music, where we'd kind of work together like with the music and the timing of the cuts, especially with like Tabitha, where it's like, oh, this specific sound is happening here. You know, I'd ask him like, can we move it, you know, measure it forward or something, so I can have the cut match. So we would almost like simultaneously work on the music and the final cut at the same time.
Right.
I was gonna ask with your movies too, like with your usage of music. After I like watched it, I was like, was there music in there? And I like didn't want to go back and check. I wanted to like ask you, because I was like, I watched the whole thing. I was like, maybe. And I was like, I don't think so though, right?
I think in Hibachi Restaurant there is like a little bathroom kind of like sound, you know, little. That's the only music though. At that time, I was like very adamant about like, which I'm not like this anymore. But I think there is something to it. But just as I was learning and figuring things out, I'm like, if I'm putting in music, I'm not doing my job. Like, that was my point of view at the time. It was like, I need to be able to make something that's compelling, you know, just as is, as simple as possible.
Yeah. Well, how big was like sound design and like Foley for you?
Oh, huge. Definitely big. That's why we have this conversation a lot, where it's just like what are the most important, and I was just having this too, but like, what's the most important parts of filmmaking? I feel like for me, it's definitely story.
Yeah.
Performance, casting, like that all in one, just like absolutely crucial. And then I think sound design, you know, even before really anything else, like those 3 are like, I feel like so essential. And if those aren't on point, like, you know, that's it.
And I remember seeing that in college, where it's like a movie would, you know, someone would screen something, and I was like, oh, this isn't working. And then as soon as they added the right music, or added some sound effects, and I was like, oh, like there's the world that we were missing. And it just kind of like, something would click, and you're like, this makes sense.
Right.
Are you involved in like the sound effects side of things with recording Foley, or?
Yeah, for our projects we did all the sound design for both.
Nice.
On our, well, it was like you could find like a partner, just someone rolling it and stuff. So, but yeah, no, that was so fun. I love doing Foley. Love all sound design. Like, great.
Yeah.
It's film school, great experience. Nice being around all film people. I love it.
Oh yeah.
But it is so refreshing and nice to just talk to so many people that are doing very different things, and it's just, I feel like that's very, very important.
Yeah, and that's where like NFFTY was awesome too, because that was like the first festival I really ever attended. And after like being in New York for some time and then going back to like a huge film community, it was like so cool.
Yeah,
it was like a kind of a spark I needed.
Right.
So
That's it. NFFTY really is. That's a great way of putting it. It is a spark. What do you feel connects Tabitha and Alfie?
So with Tabitha and Alfie, a lot that we were focusing on with these projects were kind of like twisted love stories. So trying to find relationships that weren't typical in a romance-based movie.
Right.
And with like Tabitha, a big inspiration for it was actually like kind of animalistic relationships. And so we really kind of focused on like ritual and routine, that then connected to like the rhythm of it, where it like felt kind of, we wanted to feel like it was like a courtship of sorts. I was living in LA, like watched a bunch of like Planet Earth and Blue Planet, and it was just like the whole thing is just about like animal relationships and reproducing.
Right.
And that was like as Moss and I started like working on that script, and so I think that kind of like inspiration just kind of got naturally fed into it. Like it just kind of fit.
Wow.
And then for Alfie, again, it was kind of like this weird like courtship of games, and it's just kind of like this darker, offbeat approach to like what a love story could be. And that was kind of like the initial goal of like the two of them. And we wanted it to feel like they were like they lived in a similar world,
Right.
but like totally separate stories, different characters,
Right.
but kind of connected within something twisted. What about for you though? Because I feel like Hibachi and Orthodontist like totally connect like within
Definitely.
like the same world too. Or I almost feel like they belong like in a series together too.
That's
where-
kind of what I'm been trying to work on for
Yeah.
a couple years now. Is like I feel like honestly I didn't know that much about what worked and what didn't work to the point where I was just ready to throw anything out. I'm
Yeah.
like, let's just see if it works. Like that was always the mentality.
That's what you got to do. You're just like
Exactly.
experimenting. You're putting your all in something, but you're still just like, we'll see.
Yeah,
like,
it's the
this
whole
might
thing.
totally suck.
Yes. Yeah, it's just kind of like it was very instinctual, both of those. And like you're saying, it was just an experiment. I don't know if they were gonna work. Something that I thought was funny, and we'll see what other people think.
Yeah.
I think after making the first one, I think I was like, all right, this works.
Yeah, you got like a format for it.
Yeah,
kind of
and
thing.
it was like people were pretty receptive to it, and I'm like, okay, exactly. It's a format. I'm like, let's just try and do it.
And it's really hard to like compare those two projects to anything. Like the only thing I've seen that even comes close is like I've seen that Pigeons.
Yep, Roy Anderson. Which
And
I adore. He's
that
the
was like the
best.
first thing I thought about. Besides that, there's. So do you have like a plan for doing another one like that, or?
For the past couple years, I've been trying to develop a series that would be very similar to those. Same format, stylistically, tonally. Very interested in like exploring public space a lot more, like showing as many possible parks. I mean, like, around here, like it's great. There's just so much you could do.
Yeah, ribs in a park.
Yeah, exactly. That's the scene.
Yeah,
That's the
that'd
thing.
be fantastic.
I feel like location is like that was what drove it. That was what drove writing the scenes for Hibachi Restaurant too. It's just like that for me. The location informs everything.
Yeah, and it really becomes a character. I feel like that's something that wasn't touched on much for me in like my film school experience, where it's like really how, of course, like location's important.
Now Tabitha,
But-
that location's amazing.
man,
That window, that shape.
Yeah, you know what's
Crazy.
funny? We originally we were gonna film that in the house that we filmed Alfie at.
Wow.
And then the house we filmed Tabitha at was the producer's house they lived at in college. And then like I think things fell through with the original location, and then we went there to check it out. And as soon as we saw the window, we were like this. That was like one of those moments where like we have to do this.
So good.
Whatever we have to do, if we have to delay the project, it has to be filmed right here. And I'm pretty sure like it changed parts of the script and how we approached things, where it really became like a character within itself. And that's why I was so curious about like the way that you set up like all your projects, like where you're putting the camera. Because this is just like one angle for the scene. Like, how long do you take to really decide like where you're putting the camera?
That's just something I want to carry forward too. And like I feel like it's so important. It's just having ample time to, like we were doing at most on both of those, maybe 2, maybe 3 setups a day. But I mean, I love that. You need that time to get it perfect, and then, instead of rushing, get this shot, I would love to just be able to, do that forever. Like, and I know, but that costs money, but just having as few setups a day and stretch that out for as long as you need to, just have the time.
Well, that's the hardest part, where it's like you're on a time limit with filming, which I love too, but then it's like, so you're forced to be creative like with this constraint.
Right.
Last question. Like what's the best like piece of advice you've received for filmmaking, or maybe something that's like you've experienced that you really kind of embody? And
I would say right now, one thing I'm just constantly is on my mind is just casting. Like, just cast. Do not rush. Cast. That's the last. If you don't have your cast perfect, there's no reason to do the movie. Like, honestly, I think that is the one thing that needs to be perfect, and then you can figure everything else out.
dude, I totally agree with Tabitha. We actually had a different voice actress originally for the phone, and like pretty much all the way up until the final cut, we like thought we were totally done with the movie. that something's not working. And so then we realized like that just the voice actor was phenomenal who we had before, is a good friend of mine, but it was just the approach that I went with directing, where it's like we needed someone who felt more in tune with reality, because everything else in the movie is not. And so before, like the acting on the phone kind of fit the world of it, and we needed something that was based in reality, so that like they were questioning it for the audience. Yeah,
but all right,
we're in mosquito territory.
I'm luckily so far, but all right, same to you. Best advice.
Yeah, I had a film teacher in high school, Drake Doremus, who's gone on to make like really awesome big projects, and he gave us some feedback on our last day, that essentially was like, as a filmmaker, you were storytellers, and as a storyteller, you have to live life. So if you want to be a great director and storyteller and writer, you just have to like live life and experience things. So he told us like, work weird jobs, live in different places, like fall in love, fall out of love, fall back in love.
Right.
So those are the things that you will put into your projects. And that was kind of like, again, like seeing Harold and Maude in high school, one of those things where I was like, wow, like, and really just embody fully, like good and bad, just like, yeah, this is like stuff that hopefully I can put into future projects.
Right.
Even when things suck, it's like, yeah, this is like a new emotion or a new experience. And
right.